What if AI isn't your advantage but your risk? This week on the Next Interview Show, Joel Salinas breaks down why most leaders are getting AI wrong and how to use it without losing trust, clarity, or control. If you're leading a team right now, this conversation will change how you think. Before we bring you today's episode with our amazing guest, we wanted to remind you that you can't implement what you hear on the podcast without the capacity and capability to get out of the way of success. In other words, you can't be the bottleneck. Visit our website, dolandwhite.com, and download Are You the Bottleneck and take the assessment today. In as little as 30 minutes, you'll walk away with hidden insights on how to reach the velocity to scale your business.
Welcome to the Next Interview Show podcast. I'm Dolan White, and as Liam, the announcer, mentioned when we came through the front door, I am the host of the podcast. And I know I say this on every episode, listeners, that I'm always blessed to have amazing conversations. And today is by far no exception to that. I'm looking forward to our chat today. My guest today is Joel Salinas. And for transparency's sake, met Joel by stumbling into one of his Substack conversations and interviews. And from the content of the interview and the way you conducted the thoughtfulness of it, I thought, man, we got to talk. And so we've met each other and was really attracted to kind of the authentic way you talk about leadership. And we're going to spend some time today talk about AI, which is, which is the topic, right? Matter of fact, I'll tell you about a call I had this morning about AI with an individual. But I'm going to do a little bit about your bio, and then we'll get started. And Joel Salinas is a strategic AI, the only time I read, strategic AI leadership coach and founder of Leadership in Change, where he helps executives cut through the noise and build practical, human-centered AI strategies that actually work. That's a whole mouthful just there. There's a lot that we're going to get into that. Through his work at Kazora and his advisory practice, he partners with mission-driven leaders to translate AI from buzzwords into measurable business impact. Oh my God. We got that to talk about too. Joel's focus is simple but powerful. Adopt technology without losing clarity, credibility, and most importantly, the human core of leadership. And whether you knew that or not, that's who you are. So, according to my bio. So welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Welcome here.
It's accurate.
Just as I mentioned at the cap, there's 1,000 other things you could be doing, a bunch of other places you could be at. You're going to be spending time with me for the next half hour, 40 minutes or so, just to be truthful. And just want to tell you, thank you for doing that. Thank you for being here to share your expertise and skills with leaders and help them progress in their careers and be better at what they do.
Yeah, I know. My pleasure. Really excited to be talking to you, Donald.
So the first place I kind of want to really start with it is people don't know you. They may not have seen you on Substack, surprisingly enough. But I would like you to just take a couple of minutes just to talk about your journey, kind of what brought you to where you are today, because this is a broad topic, AI and leadership and the human core.
Oh yeah,
and not losing that is a tender topic right now in my heart with a lot of stuff going on. So let's just take a couple of minutes and kind of go through that.
Yeah, man. My journey, it's hard to know even where to start. But I was born in Bolivia, South America. So parents, my dad is from Bolivia, mom's from Argentina. So born and raised South America, speak Spanish. My focus has always been how can we help people? There's people who literally have nothing. There's people who have a lot. How can we kind of bridge that gap in some ways? Over the course of my journey, I studied business in college. I got my MBA, and then just started diving into what business environment looks like. I was the director of business development for a university, and then I also served within the nonprofit world. That's always been close to my heart, and I am the senior director of growth for World Relief. It's a humanitarian aid organization.
Yeah.
So a lot of different hats, but my focus keeps going back to how can we help people who are
Mm.
trying to do big things in the world. So that's essentially what I look at when I'm thinking about leadership. There are many people with the heart to do things well, with the ideas to do things well. They just need to craft it in a way that their impact can grow. I'm sure you've seen that
Sure.
time and time again. There's so much potential here. Let's just try to get
Yeah.
that potential out.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's the boy. That touches a string in my heart. I think people lose track of when we, particularly when we talk about leadership. There is I think
Mm-hmm.
there's this concept, I think, Joel, around people tend to think, leadership is moving something towards an outcome. And an outcome is a derived thing that you get. You get that. But it's the changing of the
Mm-hmm.
lives and the impact that goes kind of at multiple layers. Because it's not about the employee that you have, it's about their wife or husband or their kids or their college bills or their cars. It's about those things that you impact as a leader that go way deeper than where you are. So I love what you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
with helping people. One of the in
Yeah.
particularly with in the nonprofit world, and it's just so before we kind of talk about AI, because we're going to talk about AI, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
for my sake and for the listener's sake, what does it mean to be director of growth? I hope I got the title right. That's what I thought I heard you say.
Yeah. 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 So, World Relief is an organization that helps those who need it most. We focus on what we call the displacement crisis. People have been
Mm-hmm.
moved from their homes because of war, political crises, drought, whatever it is, and we just come in there and help however we can. So my role is not so much the boots on the
Sure.
ground going to these countries, but how can we connect with other organizations? How can we connect with churches, with donors, with people who have a heart
Right.
for the kind of things that we're doing? And the more people that we have behind us, the more impact that we can have in in the people who need
Yeah,
it
that's
most.
awesome. I was just wrote down as we talk. You'll see me write something down. I'm 72, almost
Hey,
73. And if
perfect.
I don't like skewer it with a pin, there's an old saying, right? Words are like slippery fish. If you don't skewer them at the end of a pin, they swim away. So I skewer it so I don't forget
Hey,
about it. Um,
I get it. I'm very techy, and I have apps for everything, but my to-do list is still pen and paper.
Here we go.
I can't get over
Yeah,
it.
me as
Yeah,
well.
it's right here.
So it's interesting, and so one of the things that, and we'll kind of hook kind of AI into that conversation too a little bit. But one of the things that I enjoyed about hearing what you've spoken about before, other than making me stop and think about, am I ChatGPT or Claude? What am I doing? Am I what am I Methodist or in? So as I kind of think about that, but I know I think there's a struggle in leadership around AI and placement AI,
Mhm.
and there's a we've seen a lot of technology trends. I'm older, so I've seen, I actually used to wear a pager at one point in time, probably when you were very young. I had my own pager, and then kind of went on from there. And um, I'm kind of curious about your thinking around kind of what that means, where leaders are really trying to say, "Hey, I know I got to do AI," and so there's a knee jerk kind of way. I'm just going to jump in. Uh, and the reason why I asked
Mhm.
that from a context perspective is I was on a call this morning with a friend, just chatting, and she mentioned, "Hey, look, yeah, AIs. I told her, yeah, we're going to have a conversation today." And she mentioned, "Yeah, we're doing AI in the company, and we're directed by our executive team to go get our own free accounts, and doesn't matter what platform, and go figure out AI. Go." Which I kind of went, that's okay. So that's really knee jerk, just using old guy phrase. Um, so I'm really kind of curious from your perspective, what you see happening from that, from an adoption perspective, and then two is what is meaningful adoption? Why does it matter?
Mhm.
What do you get?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, when you see the headlines say 80%, 85% of AI implementations fail. There's no ROI. There was a recent one that said 85% from MIT, 85% of AI investments are gone within 6 months. And it's because they use the wrong approach. And this is part of what I talk to so many leaders about in my coaching. You have AI is a huge tool, but just like fire, just like electricity, I'm not just going to hand, a match to my 7-year-old. Right. It can light up, a wonderful bonfire where we can have, marshmallows, chocolate, and we can have warmth and we can enjoy. Or that same match could just be dropped on the carpet because we're lighting it indoors and just lights a house on fire. AI is one of the biggest flaws that I think people have with AI right now is they overestimate how smart it is. So they think, I'm just going to give it to my employees. They're going to plug it in and we're going. It's like putting turbo in a car and we were moving at 50 miles an hour. We're now moving at 80 miles an hour. The problem is there's so much context around that is not being considered. So there are two main things if I can go into them. Two main things that I think we need to keep in mind in something like this. They're both huge and they both are huge causes of failed AI implementation. Number one is there have to be guardrails. AI doesn't know your company. AI doesn't, you're giving AI access. If you're saying, hey, write my social post about XYZ, it's going to use the entirety of the internet to create that for you. And we deal with, clients and we work with people who don't want their name out there, people who are refugees, people who are coming from different. We have to be super careful with how data is being inputted into these tools, and especially free tiers. The reason that you have free tiers, the reason that you're getting access to all this amazing capabilities is because you're helping them train their AI. So as a company, as a CEO, that is one of the last things that I would do. If my employees are going to be using AI, it's got to be an account that's paywalled and that they have signed some sort of agreement that says this is how we, as an organization, are agreeing to use AI, and this is how we are not going to use AI. Without that, you have so many employees that are just walking on the edge of a cliff, and you're just waiting for good things to happen.
I love what you're talking about there, because I think there's this perception. There's a Dire Straits song. And one of the lyrics, I'm a musician, as you can tell by the keyboard behind me. One of the things in the Dire Straits song, one of my favorite music lines of all time is "Money for nothing and chicks for free." And from that perspective, I think it is important to know that when when you step into the AI world, there's a reciprocal thing that's going on. You certainly receive benefit, but you're also teaching it. You're feeding it stuff. And then without those bumper rails, you're feeding into a bigger world. So when you're and in particularly having been a CEO and COO, there are things that you definitely want. There are privacy issues, both legal and ethical, that you want to be very, very careful about. So I'm curious, when there's anxiety around AI, and the anxiety is if I'm not in it, if I'm not doing it, then I'm not being competitive. I'm going to be, if I'm a C, whatever title I am, founder, CXO, I call them C empty spots. If I'm that individual, I have anxiety because I'm hearing AI from peers and masterminds and organizations and all of the things I belong in. So I've got anxiety there. I've got anxiety perhaps from a board or venture capitalist. I got
pressure
stuff going on, which means if I'm not moving forward, so therefore I move forward with some velocity without kind of thinking that through. How do you, what advice do you have, or how do you kind of approach, hey, take a breath and really and think about this? How do you help that process?
Yeah, and that's, I mentioned I had two ways that organizations can focus on making this better. And the second one really comes down to this. There is a human aspect that so many times is just completely ignored in the middle of an AI implementation. So yeah, you have a CEO that is getting all this pressure. And the reality is, if you give ChatGPT licenses to your staff, you can technically put on a sticker that says my organization is now AI savvy. And most of the time, that's going to be enough for your board members because they don't know AI any better. And that's kind of where it
I
ends.
don't mean to interrupt you, but that's really important.
Yeah.
Because there is the impression that there's the illusion of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You feel like you're doing something. You feel like you can start talking to your friends. Hey, we are using AI, but there's levels to it, and the piece that I think is ignored so many times, both at the senior leadership, at the manager level, and with the staff, is AI causes people a lot of anxiety. So if I am a CEO and I'm investing $50,000 on this new AI build that I'm just want to try out with my customer service team, and I just give it to my manager and I say, let's start using this tomorrow. It should help us reach 50% more clients. And I don't stop to consider, how does my manager feel about AI? Do I need to train him about the benefits of AI? Do I need to train him about how to use it wisely? And then you have staff members under them who may be thinking, okay, number one, worst case scenario, they're going to fire everybody in 6 months and just have AI do everything. So I don't want to use this tool. Or number two, they're going to be asking me to do 200% more stuff. So they're not going to want to use it. So the project, no matter how good the build is, it's doomed to fail because the infrastructure, the people around it are not being set up for success.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry to make a couple of notes. It reminds me of a story. I'm originally from Alabama, so I grew up telling stories and hearing stories. So, and I speak their language, so we're good to go. Talking about being bilingual, but one of the things that I remember, it's funny you mentioned that because I hadn't thought about this in years, Joel. There was a time I grew up in technology. I spent 30 years in the technology industry doing a bunch of stuff and then wandered off to be CEOs and COOs. And one of the things that happened through that, I remember coming home from work one day and my mom was in the kitchen visiting and she was in tears. And it's like, what's going on? And she had a technology back in the days, CC mail, foisted on her and with no training. And basically she was told, go figure it out, go do it. And if you can't figure it out by the end of the day, we're going to have to let you go. And that never left me. That moment, I actually ended up teaching around it, but that moment of that impact, that psychological impact, and the pressure from saying, not only from personally, am I stupid? Why can't I figure this out? And this looks really hard, and I should be able to do this, much less lose my job, which means I can't pay my bills, which means now I can't have rent and I got to live with you. And that was like, well, please don't live with me. So, not again. So it's interesting you talk about that because I think there's, for the sake of the do, AI gets implemented, which is that to answer that pressure and that anxiety. So how do you, one of the things I talk about all the time, and you probably see this in the content, we were chuckling about my content stuff a little while before we got on. I like talking about trust, and because I think that's the pillar, that's the starting place. So how do you, when you're implementing trust, when you're implementing AI into the body of your organization, before you even get there, without thinking about the technology, without thinking about the platform or the bumper rails, data, and all the blah blah blah, how do you prep the team for that move?
I mean, that's the question. That's the question that I think 95% of CEOs, COs just don't even stop to consider. One of the first things that I would do is, and I have a free assessment actually on my website, and I work with CEOs. I work with people take an assessment of your teams to see how they feel about AI so you know how to approach it. So, for example, I was working with somebody who just didn't want to use a certain tool.
Oh,
And I was thinking, is it because of this? Is it because of this? Is it because the tool's not good enough? They're afraid they're going to be replaced. And I could have spent all this time training on all these things. But I did a small assessment, and it turns out the person had read an article about the energy consumption of AI. And they felt like, I'm killing the environment if I use AI. So I just don't want to use AI because I don't want to kill the world. And there was a lot of training that went up. Well, if you do this, if you do this, everything's tied in now. So even if you're on Google, you're still using AI. But it comes in to understand, how does the person feel about AI? You can then train around that. And then the second hugely important thing in my mind is you have to explain what is the why behind bringing AI in. Because if as a CEO, if I'm an entry level employee and I'm getting $40,000 a year to be customer service, and my CEO says, I'm going to bring AI, I'm going to make everybody learn AI, and we're going to make 25% more profit this year. As a customer service agent that gets a $40,000 salary, I don't care. Like, I don't care if the CEO is just going to get wealthier, And so it has to be something that comes down to me. So a simple example that I give people, not example, but suggestion of what to do is tell your employees, hey, I foresee that without AI, we're not going to be able to compete in the market within the next 10 years. And I foresee that you as an employee are not going to be skilled for what's coming in the next 10 years. So we as a team are trying to bring AI. We're going to train you on how to use it. That should save you about 2 hours every week because you're going to be able to do your job faster. But as a company, I've already spoken with the leadership. We want to give you those 2 hours for you to use in office, paid, and develop your own skills. So we're going to offer professional development. But now you are going to be incentivized to use AI. If you use it well, you're going to get 2 hours every week that you're going to be able to upskill yourself to succeed in the next decade. All of a sudden, everybody wants to do it. And that is when you then bring in the tool and start implementing. But not
I love that. I think it is that there's a great book. There's a guy named Robert Cialdini out there, and Cialdini wrote this book on persuasion. I was CEO of a marketing firm for several years. Persuasion.
What's it called?
I'll send it I'll send it. I'll pop it out to you. You'll love it. It weighs about 19 pounds. It's a big book. But I love that in persuading that result that you're looking for with the team, which is this is all about you. Because I think one of the things that, and I get to talk about this all the time with my clients. This is your podcast. We don't talk about what I do, but is one of the ways that we define business is a business is merely a collection of people in relationships. And in relationships, there's a bond that occurs between us, and we don't like change. That's why I go to the same grocery store, same hardware store, because I know where it is in there. I can go find it. I've had this chair for years. It's built to portions of my anatomy. This is a PG podcast, so we can't talk about that. But from that perspective, that whole idea around persuading with the change and then moving it to inspiration. This is something that will inspire you. So let's do AI. And I'll give you something to measure against. My commitment to you, which is trust, is I'm going to help you develop yourself and get better at it. Because there is terror in it. My youngest son, we raised 5 sons. Youngest son is a copywriter, and great, just an amazing job. He writes for a company that makes plushies. They make plushies for Warner Brothers and Dr. Seuss, all kinds of things. So he's the favorite uncle of all the little granddaughter girls, right? Is the favorite. And
I bet.
We've had that conversation around kind of that terror barrier around, people say AI is going to replace my content writing, and it's going to step in without that ultimate side. So I could see why implementing that AI structure without that in place, without that thoughtfulness, is gonna lead
Hmm.
to it's a death spiral. You know.
Oh yeah.
So when you're
Oh yeah.
when you're working with in the organizations, and I appreciated your comment around that's not the starting question CEOs start at. So I'm curious about where do you see people start at that conversation around AI?
Yeah. Most people just see, I mean, dollars when
Yeah,
when they're thinking of AI. They're seeing you just quick money. I mean, it's the same. That's the promise that you see everywhere. You go online, you go on YouTube, you go and it
all the
says,
time.
you know, I built this app that's making $100,000 a month in
Yeah,
2 hours, and you you know that,
yeah,
and so media does that because that's what you need to sell, and that's honestly the reason that back in April of last year I founded
mhm,
leadershipandchange.com, because I really wanted to have a place where I could talk freely about, as I'm learning AI and as I'm learning tech, about where is the strategic intersection of leadership and AI in order for leaders to future proof themselves. They already have the
yeah,
skills, they already have the abilities, but how can they mix that with the benefits of AI so that they can set themselves up for success in the next 10 years? Because there's so much garbage out there that dominates the airways on, company A, company B, they tripled their profits in two
right.
months because of AI.
Yes,
That's not
yeah. It's
replicable.
funny you mentioned that. What came to mind is the picture of having been in the marketing world for a few years as part of my career journey. The pictures of people standing next to the Maserati, going, which they
Yeah,
rented, by the way,
yeah.
you know, right? Kind of with their hand on the hood because they're not allowed to sit on it
Oh,
because they don't want to pay for
100%.
the scratch. So it is kind of that the top 7 ways you can make $1 million with AI tomorrow. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the big problems, because we see, I mean, I I don't I other
Yeah,
than my business, I don't have social media. I don't have personal social media other than LinkedIn, because there's just too much trash in
mm,
there. And what it does is it puts on a pedestal the outlier, the 0.001% of the cases where everything went right and this happens. And this person is now selling it to everybody, saying, I can make the same thing happen to all of you.
yeah,
And so many people are chasing this unrealistic goal. That's not, you can't chase an outlier.
right.
They're an outlier for
Yeah,
a
I
reason.
love that statement. So leaders is you periodically leaders, you'll hear me say this on the podcast. On your phone, somewhere in the lower corner, there's a rewind button. Go back to what you were just talking about, Joel, which is chasing outliers.
Yeah.
And I think there's a,
Hmm.
as an executive, that becomes the kind of the a symptom that you see inside of the body of an organization where they're
Yeah.
chasing. I used to talk to been blessed, been part of masterminds and the blah 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 in my career.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I would see leaders do is come back after having a conversation with a CEO or a founder that was 10 years ahead of them, not only in experience and revenue, and then come back and try to, and that's an outlier standard, and come back and go, guess what we're doing today, kids, inside of the body of their organization? We're going to do what that guy did. And
Yeah. But I want to jump, I'm going to jump those 10 years of trial and error that he went through. And I just want to skip to
yeah,
the
I'm going to
results
jump the
10
Shark
years from
Tank.
now.
I'm going to go over that. And by the way, nobody's going to get, well, some of you might get eaten, but we're going to go over the Shark Tank. We're still going to get there. So as you're doing that, I think one of the things that we spend a couple of minutes kind of talking about, because I know as you're implementing, you're working with your team, and I love kind of the framing conversation. Leaders go back and listen to that again around
Hmm.
how to frame the intent behind AI, which is incredibly important, because if your team doesn't know the for the sake of what, or Simon Sinek calls it the why, if they don't know that,
So,
then there's no connection. Uh, you know,
hmm they're probably going to assume the
Yeah,
worst too. They're probably going to think, I have no job security. They're bringing AI. There's going to be a robot sitting in my seat. When the CEO
right.
may not even be considering this, but all of a sudden performance across the whole company plummets, and you're wondering why. Well, it's because you never explained
Yeah,
your why.
there's no meaning. My favorite example is always a forklift drive. Early in my career, I got to learn how to drive a forklift. Back when Kmart existed, I was like 19. I'm this kid driving forklifts. Only drove it off the dock point. But there is that individual who's driving that forklift driver. There's no compelling. It's just another thing. This too shall pass. It's going to go away. Matter of fact, I'll see what I can do to help it fail just by ignoring it. I'll take a passive stance. So I guess one of the things that I'm curious about is, because there are economic implications with AI, and I'm curious about kind of where you see, and this is a 9-pound question. So let me try to phrase it succinctly. As you were talking about the gift of time. So we're going to do AI, and it's going to return a couple of hours a week where you get to improve yourself and learn new things, which in turn, kind of the silent, unspoken side of that is the benefit to that is then that improves the organization, improves the company at the same time. And I love that. I used to tell my team I would love investing in the education of my teams. I would tell them I'll pay for anything up to piano lessons. I won't pay for piano lessons. But from an economic perspective, then there is an impact there, and AI has that. So how do you help executives and teams really frame in what that economic structure what that change really looks like? Because there is that perception of that panacea. I'm going to do the 7 things, and I'm going to make $300,000 in 60 days because I turned on I adopted agentic AI. Nobody knows what the hell that is, but I adopted it. So.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, there's just so much noise out there that just like almost everything in life, nobody wants to hear the boring answer, but you have to start small. And that's where I'm working with an organization in California, and I'm working with their CEO, and they just wanted to start, hey, we know AI is going to be good for us. We work with different, just very classified data, and we just want to be very careful with how we implement it. So I started by meeting with him, meeting with the COO, meeting with a few of the directors, and just seeing, how does this work? How do you all feel about AI? And then we picked one of the areas where AI could really help them, and it was they pay for a tool every month for all their users that essentially takes one article and puts it into a Facebook, LinkedIn, different versions, content versions, and they're spending a lot of money on this through people and through subscriptions. So we said, okay, let's just use AI, and I worked with them and I built them an AI content repurposer that they own fully on their website, and essentially they have automatically replaced all of these subscriptions that they used to have. They wholly own the tool. They can change whatever they want of the tool, and it's customized and personalized to that organization, but then used by all the people in that organization. So people are not replaced. They saved a ton of money because they're not paying for subscription, and they can be a lot more efficient. Now it's up to them to see how they use that time, but they have a lot more time back and money. So pick one small piece, and that's where a consultant comes in. Let's look at everything that you're doing. What's one low risk piece, and let's just try that and take a baby step.
I love that, Joel, because I think it is that baby steps, right? It is that small step, and particularly when there is when you have a lot of anxiety and you've got the pressures, right? I call it 4 domains of pressure, but you got all this pressure on you. You want to eat the elephant. And I'm gonna do it quickly. I'm gonna turn it on and go. One thing that I want to as kind of part of the thread of the conversation there, Joel. I want to wrote something down. I kind of
Yeah.
when you're working with executives, I think a lot of
Hmm.
times the problem that they see is not the problem,
Yeah.
and because AI is a problem, and AI gets perceived as I got to do it without the connection to that root. What is really the thing that we're trying to solve?
Yeah.
Um, how do you, this is important, leaders. How do you, and no pressure, Joel. How do you kind of help them understand through that conversation, through the exploration, okay, what I'm hearing you say is this is your problem, but what your problem really is kind of over here. And this would be a good place to start.
Yeah. One of the first things that now, if you're, if you're a 70-year-old CEO, it's going to be a
Yeah, yeah,
little different than a
sure.
40-year-old CEO. But
I won't take that
one of the main
personally,
things
by the
is
way. So you're good.
one of the main things is you have skills, you have talents. Those are those are there, and you think, okay, I
Yeah,
made it to the CEO level. I can just let my company understand AI. I don't really need to understand it. And one of the first things that I would tell CEOs is just open an account. It doesn't matter where it is, Gemini,
yeah.
ChatGPT, um, it my personal is Claude, and just start using it. Just start seeing
Sure.
how it works. Understand, how it communicates to you. Just play
Mhm.
around with it, because you don't want especially if you're bringing in something like this to your company. You don't want the image of what AI is to be shaped by whatever you read on social media. You want it to be shaped by how you truly feel about it. And when leaders are
Yeah,
afraid that they're going to miss out, to be honest, that should be a fear, because when the way that I see technology moving, you're not going to be able to compete in the market. And 99% of companies are not going to be able to compete
yeah.
without AI. But not just random AI, strategic AI use. AI that magnifies what a company does. That is what's going to get. Now, a lot of companies are just plugging in ChatGPT everywhere. Employees are no longer thinking, they're just spouting out AI slop. And what that's actually going to do is the opposite. They're going to start losing their identity,
Right,
losing their uniqueness. They're not going to be differentiated, and they're
right.
just going to be out of business. But to me, it's similar to how nonprofits 10, 15 years ago or more just said, oh, we can do it without social media. We really
Oh,
don't need
yeah,
to
yeah.
reach out to people on social media. Or go back further and how organizations said, I'm a restaurant or I'm a bakery.
Right.
I don't need a website. I don't need to be on Google. You do. If you want to reach your potential, if you want to be a small, I make handmade pottery and I sell it to the people around my street, that is going to be a
Sure.
possibility. But if you really want to expand, it is going to be imperative in the next decade for you to not just have ChatGPT subscriptions, but actually understand what strategic AI looks like
Yeah.
for you.
I think that's really important. I think a couple of things
And,
in
and
there that you touched on, I think, are really, really important. The first is FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, right? There's always
yeah,
FOMO. I think sitting in the
mhm,
back in my mind,
yeah,
I'm probably judging for a lot of executives. There may be some executives that raise that kind of go, I don't worry about it. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You just don't admit it. You do. But there's always that little whisper in the back of your head around what am I missing? And it actually, love your point,
mhm,
because it should be FOMO, when executed correctly, is a really sharp weapon to keep you thinking and keep you strategic and
yeah.
keep you thinking about what is that
You don't get
right.
complacent. You're constantly trying to
Yeah,
improve,
and when
and
because
yeah,
complacency again, that's the second spiral of death. Yeah, I'm complacent, I'm good to go, and
mhm,
somebody else is climbing that mountain right behind you. You just don't see them yet. Um, but it's
yeah,
interesting because I do believe that, and I think that's part of excuse me, please, as we're kind of heading into there's around the economic implications of AI. There are benefits with AI with velocity and I think speed, and I think there's There's implications with AI around decision making. One of the I love to coach on is to remind my clients, when you get to 80% of the information you need, call the ball. There's no 100%. Just call the ball. Use your intuition.
That's so funny. I use the
Yeah, it's a
80% as well.
thank you Pareto for that's the reverse Pareto. Don't worry about the 20, get the 80.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because
Yeah.
I think what you were talking about, Joel, is really important for leaders to listen to, which is the strategic implication as AI continues to evolve, because it's going to keep going. Several years ago, I got to debate singularity with Diamandis, so it was fun to go do that with Peter. But another conversation, we'll talk about that. But it's interesting because I do agree with you. I think if you're as a leader in the organization, you set the standard. The CEO is first in, last out.
Exactly.
I'm old, so I am in my 70s. I'm that 70-year-old CEO. And but you're the first in, and if you're really truly embodying the leadership, you're first in, last out. Doesn't mean you're there all the time, but that's who you are. Which means if your team is adopting it, understand it.
Yeah, you don't have to know the minutia, but you do have to understand it. And one of the reasons that I talk about you as not you, but 7-year-old CEOs, you've gone through a lot of, you've gone through a lot of cycles. And one of the things that you cannot get to be a successful 7-year-old if you haven't developed what I call the 3 biggest skills in the age of AI: adaptability, creativity, and innovation. You already know those things because you've had to innovate, or you wouldn't have get to where you are. But if you have a CEO who's 40, 45, and they think, hey, I'm set, like I know how to do this right, and they don't develop the skill to adapt, they don't develop the skill to innovate, they're going to be out of business quickly because of how things are moving.
And I'd smile when you were saying that. We had a conversation with a gentleman. It's been about a year since we had this conversation, and it was founded around nobody cares like I do, nobody does it like I do, and it was kind of like, all right, let's peel back the layers on that onion a little bit, because there will be tears. Let's kind of get into it. So one of the things that I would kind of, as we've been here for a while, I want to just maybe talk about a couple more things if you're still good on time.
Yeah.
I think that one of the components. So in the bio that I read, Joel's focus is simple but powerful: adopt technology without losing clarity, credibility, or the human core of leadership. And I think I want to lean in kind of just for a moment or two on the human core of leadership, because I think there can be the tendency in an organization, if I'm implementing AI, I can let go of the human core. We have AI. Go just ask it the question and just go do it. So how do you, when you're working with your clients, how do you help them kind of keep the checks, that human check that goes in place to maintain, okay, we're using this as a tool. How do we keep our checks and balances? And then how do we keep that flow of communication going? So we know whether what AI is telling us we're going to go do. How do you keep that balance?
Yeah. That to me is the big differentiator is AI doing the thinking for you, or is AI doing the execution for you? For me, I come up with the ideas, then I come to AI and I say, okay, help me execute on this idea. And then I constantly, or a lot of times I bring an idea to AI and I say, what kind of things can I be missing? What kind of questions do I need to ask here? Or because AI has seen, hundreds of thousands of companies fail and succeed, and has all the case studies. But if it doesn't start with me, if I'm somebody who just says, hey, ChatGPT, write this. I write 2 articles every week on leadershipandchange.com. And the reason that I became a bestseller within about 5 months on Substack is because I believe it's because the content is my content, and I do collaborate, and there's a lot of the execution with AI. but it's Joel
Mm-hmm.
that's in there. And the easiest way for you to become replaceable is for you to take out that human piece out of there, take out the Donald piece
Mm-hmm.
out of your AI, and just use the generic AI ChatGPT answer, Claude answer. That's probably not going to be bad, but it's going to be the same answer that 8 billion
Right.
other people can get. And you, that doesn't help
Yeah.
you at all because you're losing who you are. You're
Yeah.
becoming replaceable.
I think that's
You know?
that's really insightful because there is that tendency to, because AI knows, and it is
Yeah.
that, not to, we've poked the stick at marketing a little bit, but one of the things that I always used to love at talking to my clients about is what makes you unique. What is unique about you? Because if you're another flavor of vanilla, we're,
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to pitch vanilla. So let's really talk about who
Yeah.
you really are, right? And I think that's a struggle, and that's, I think, can be the I think that can be the temptation, I think, in business as AI gets rolled out, is we'll just ask it questions and it's going to tell us what to do,
Yeah.
and we lose ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an article come out recently, past few weeks. That's the one differentiator that can get you to use AI like the top
Yeah,
1% is context. Context. Does AI know who Donald is? Your business, your goals. Is that part of your prompt? Or are you just saying, hey, how do I run a marathon? Or how do I
sure,
launch a new project? If you are just typing in, how do I launch a new project? There's no context. You're just saying, I'm going to trust AI. What you're doing is essentially putting out a poll to everybody who's on the internet, taking the average of all those answers and just saying, yeah,
yeah,
I'm going to go do that. We would never do that. We would never let the average internet answer decide for us. But everybody who's using AI
yeah,
and taking the first answer, that's
yeah.
exactly what they're
That's
doing.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, yes, I would. I just shake my head on that. I can give you a hearty amen on that, because it is
Yeah.
that temptation to kind of say, well, let's, and that's, which is the
Yeah.
illusion of velocity, right? If I can get the answer
Yeah.
quickly, that means I can go faster, which means
Mm-hmm. But are you going
right,
faster in the right
exactly,
direction or the wrong?
exactly. And
You
that's
know?
one of the definitions of stupidity is going quickly in the wrong direction, but because just for the sake of illusion. So I
Yeah. And I think that gives you a false sense of
yes,
productivity, a false sense of I'm being really productive because I'm getting all these things done. But you're getting
yeah,
all that stuff done without having to think. AI is giving you the standard average answer, so you're not differentiating yourself. And if you do that for 2 years, you have just atrophied your muscle of the brain. You haven't
yeah,
gotten any better.
yeah. That area, that
You know?
yes, yeah, yeah. That that whole thing that makes you who you are experientially goes, just diminishes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've been in marketing. As soon as you're not unique, as soon as you're not differentiating
Right.
yourself, you're done.
Yes, and it has to be authentic. That's the which is
Yeah.
kind of that last piece. But yeah, very much so.
Mhm.
So we've, I warned you, we've gone past what I thought we were going to go past. And since there's no elegant exit, I want to talk about a couple things. The very first thing is I love this conversation. Um, Leaders, I'm going to encourage you, and in the show notes, leaders, I don't share a lot of links and URLs and things on the podcast, because if you're driving, I don't focus on the road. Don't try to write stuff down. It's all in the show notes.
Mhm.
Whatever platform you go to, all of the information about Joel will be there. The website, Substack, how to find him, how to reach out to him, everything but social media, because he's not there. But the one thing I really want to kind of talk about is, I remind leaders all of the time that effective leadership, to be an empowered leader, means you don't do it by yourself. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like in our life for our health, right? There are people we may go work out with, and they teach us how to work out. There's people we go to the dentist and they tell us
Mhm.
stuff, and we go to a brain surgeon for other stuff. And there's moments in time. That's why I believe there's no competition in coaching and consulting. There's no such thing as competition. Um,
Yeah.
I want to talk just a little bit about the kinds of clients, if you don't mind, the kinds of clients that you do work
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
and the kinds of clients that you don't. Because as we mentioned, kind of before we hit go, right? I'm not for everybody. Not everybody's for me. So I'm really kind of curious,
Yeah.
because as leaders, I would encourage you to have a conversation with Joel to actually explore this. AI is part of your world. You cannot not do
Mhm.
AI from the from that phrase. Let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your clients and the from that side too.
No, that's a good question. One of the main things that you'll see when you go to my website is
Uh-huh.
human-centered AI. And the reason I have that is because I believe more than anything, if a human is in the loop and if it maximizes what we can do,
Right.
that's true AI use. So the reason that I do what I do, the reason that I write what I write, the reason that I coach is because I see so much potential in leaders who are
Right.
trying to change the world through a product, through a service, whatever it is. And they could do it 20, 25,
Sure.
30% better with AI. And if I can have a small impact in that increase and that they can serve more people,
Right.
benefit more people,
Right.
I'm all in for it. Now, if you are somebody who is trying to bring AI to completely automate your services and no longer have a customer service team and clear out your 99% of your employees, I'm
Right.
probably not the guy for you, because you're really looking to run a one person business that's fully AI. The human piece is out of it. It's no longer my forte. But if you are human focused, and if you want to see how I can maximize my impact with strategic AI use,
Yeah,
that's where
I
my
love
focus
that.
is.
Um, it kind of it harkens back when in my career in 30 years in technology, and I was blessed to do that and was able to lead global teams and carry the big numbers and travel all over the world
Mhm.
and work with lots of different organizations. It is that, and I do believe it is that piece around being very clear about who you are, what you do, and what you do not do
Mhm.
that helps people
Yeah,
succeed on that. And
yeah. I love that
yeah,
question.
no,
Thanks for bringing
it's
it
my
up.
pleasure, and I think it's very important. So, leaders, I would encourage you for where you fit, because there's all kinds of leaders that listen to the podcast. I'm assuming. Um, Somebody told me the other day I'm in the top 100 in Japan. We don't know. I don't know. Um, but one of the
And I serve
yes,
I serve global
yeah,
leaders, not
I was
just
going to say
US. So
that's the fun
just
thing about our
FYI.
technology is the fact that we can be ubiquitous. We can
Oh
talk
yeah,
to any. That's a $3 word, by
yeah.
the way. But we can talk to anybody anywhere. My old friend Eric from Zoom, Eric Yuan, in founding Zoom and doing all those things. We can do a lot of crazy stuff, and do it deeply personally if you do it correctly. So I would encourage you, leaders, reach
Mhm.
out to Joel. And you mentioned this earlier, and I wrote this down on my little piece of paper right here. Joel says the word assessment. Regardless, go to the website. The assessment's on the website.
Mhm. There's a free assessment. It's
Yeah, and I
available,
would say
ready
go
for
take the
everybody.
assessment. Um, as a result of the assessment, in the old marketing world, there's probably an opt-in. But the other thing that comes out of that from the assessment is whether you continue a relationship with Joel or not. Seek the advice and the content that he publishes. Read it, stay with it, become
Mhm.
informed. As a leader, your obligation is to constantly stay in the study and become a voracious reader. Read and study is
Mhm.
two very different things. Another podcast. Um, but yeah, but
No, that's
do
huge.
take the time to go do that. Yeah, study requires time. Reading requires entertainment. Um, but take the time and go do that. And although those notes will be in the show notes, so that you'll have an opportunity to go
Mhm.
explore Joel. And if you can't find them for any way, shape, or form, send me a note here at the podcast, and I'll send them to you. Um, so on that note, a couple things.
No,
The
this was
very
fun.
first thing
Yeah.
is again, thank you. I've really enjoyed the conversation and enjoyed the insights. A lot of
Yeah, I did as
a
well.
lot of really good ground covered here. We could turn this into a Dan Bongino style. We could go like 3 hours on this and just keep going.
I think so. I think
But
so.
thank you for doing that and for hanging out with me, and especially during the thaw out there where you are, where things are getting a little warmer now. But appreciate you and appreciate the insight.
Yeah, Donald, thank you for the open door. I appreciate it, and
Cool.
hope we do this
We
again
will.
sometime.
Who knows? We may be in our future to do another one someday. On that note, leaders, 2 things. Every podcast ends with these 2 things. The very first thing is give the podcast a no, like, share, or follow. It has nothing to do with vanity numbers. It has to do with, speaking of data, how the algorithm works so that the podcast becomes visible. The reason why it becomes visible is it serves my mission. My mission is to empower 1 million leaders. Absolutely clear on that. We do that by learning and moving from entertainment to action. So the things you heard today from Joel, find one nugget in the podcast and move it from entertainment to action, which means try it, test it, reach out, take the assessment, go read more, turn on your subscription to Claude. I'm a little lower. I use ChatGPT, so I'm further down the road, but turn it on and do that. The last part is share this with another leader or someone else who you may know is experiencing changes in leadership. Fear the pressures, the external pressures. Love the conversation around how to prep your team for it. Help them find their why. Critically important. So do those things. Let's take care of each other. We're all on the hook to create better lives, better families, better futures, better businesses. That's what we do as leaders. That's our purpose. I'm Nolan White. I'm the host of the Next Interview Show podcast. See everybody next Tuesday for the next interview. See you then. Thanks, Joel. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this week's The Next Interview Show podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and then take time to turn what you heard here into action.